thank you so incredibly much for being here today. You could be using your imagination, drawing animals in the clouds and playing Star Wars with the clouds and pretending what does what. You could be checking your Amazon to see what you could have at your house by Tuesday if you ordered it within the next 2 hours and 14 minutes. You could be doing anything, and you chose to be here. You could be like my daughter was this morning, who was like, I really want to go, but I really want to sleep, And, even in the greatest anticipation, the struggle is still real. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? Awesome. I found out something about humans. We're all human. We all have things that we struggle and things we work through. Man, I just want, if today also is your first time, thank you so incredibly much for being here. You're absolutely just a blessing, just your presence and walking the door, and hope that it is an absolute value to your time. I want to ask you, if you did get a card, please just drop it on the way out, not because anybody's going to come at you and try to do Bible studies and make you say weird things, but we just want to send you a letter and continue the gift train coming your way and just let you know how grateful we are for you, honestly. So, praise God. And if I have any men in the house before I move on, if you've never been, the real men is, we didn't get to have it last month, holiday conflicts, but so it's kicking back off. It's a fresh start today, and it's at 5 o'clock. And real men, if you've never been, I can't explain it in the time that we have, but it is just radical. It is raw. Most every time that I have not yet had someone leave that their jaw was not dropped. And these are from the introverts to the extroverts, And everybody finds a place they fit in, and it's built around a meal. Since we're in a fast, and it's a Daniel fast, we'll probably have like a big salad or something for you guys. We'll, do something real manly for you. But anyway, and for those of y'all who aren't, well, praise God. But 5 o'clock, I cannot stress it enough. Just, you're free to engage or to be completely disengaged. It is on your level, and then you decide whether you want to come back or not from that point on. All I ask is just for one shot, because I've not seen a life that has not been changed as a result yet. That is how big it is. We just believe, you know what, if you can get the man of the house living as the man of the house is better. And so we want to invest. We're not trying to say, well, where are the ladies things? Ladies are working on that, but I'm a guy, so I don't have ladies events. And that would be weird. But we do have men's events, and believe that, you know what, we want to strive to see Jesus shine through your man so much that you go, oh baby, I'm going to be like you one day. Wow, what the changes, what a new person you are. Yeah. And men, the result of that is you get to go home if you're a married man, and you get to go home, and then after a week and after a month and seeing those changes in you, since this is children's church, she just can't keep her hands off of you because of the new man you're becoming. And so I'm just saying, throwing the invitation, the red carpet out there. So it's a win for everybody. Last week we began a journey. We're just doing a short 2-week series today because we're getting ready for All In next week, which is going to be cool. I've got some poker paraphernalia for you next week, which is going to be kind of neat to give out in church. I can't wait. And but it's all rigged. It's like a casino. It's rigged, But anyway, so we're beginning just kind of setting the tone for the new year, because how many of you know a lot of people start out with New Year's resolutions, and on New Year's resolutions, everybody's going to have a diet start the first day. But doggone it, by that second day, the chocolate is calling, you know what I mean? And you get the gym membership just to realize, you know what, I should have just paid half because I only went a quarter of the time, and at least I wouldn't feel as bad. Or maybe, you're like, I'm going to read my Bible this year, baby. And you did for the first day, and then you got half your day the next day, and then you read a quarter of it the next day, and you're like, I can't keep up. The first year just has this hope that's stirred up. And what comes with hope? Hope is designed by God to be fulfilled. Praise God, and there was light. Y'all look good. So hope is designed by God to be fulfilled. But hope in our hands can also turn into disappointment before there's a fulfillment. One of the something that God honestly taught us through some of the adoption process years ago, and I don't remember the exact location of it, but it's in Proverbs. It says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. They're one and the same. The hope and the dream are in the same. It's just it's the difference in waiting on the fulfillment and going through the process of the fulfillment. And that's where we are today. So last week we began a journey in the process of a God dream. What is a God dream? That's something that he puts in your heart, somewhere you continue to lean for, something maybe in this world that breaks your heart and you say, I wish I could do something about it. Can I tell you, it's more than a good moral movement. It's likely that it's something that God has put you here in this season, in this era of time, in this place of history for, to be an influence in that area that your heart is burdened and broke for. So no one can define it but you. It's between you and God. But I want to, if I can, as I speak for a God dream, what I'm speaking of is that he created you on purpose for a purpose. But here's the deal with purpose. We talk about purpose in church a lot, and it's a buzzword. And we talk about purpose in the world a lot. It's a buzzword regardless where you go. And here's one thing that I learned about purpose. Purpose, it usually has an idea, but purpose is more revealed as we apply and we begin doing things towards that direction. For example, how many of you probably studied books? Maybe you learned something. If you're a guy, maybe you're going to fix your own car. You're not a mechanic, but you're like, I think I can fix this. And you watch your YouTube, you learn some stuff, and you kind of took in some information. Somebody told you just pull that wire off, put a new wire on. It's no big deal. And it sounded simple, but the application taught you a whole lot more. You learn a lot more. Or maybe you've been watching your little menu on your Pinterest, best cooking channel or whatever it is out there in this recipe you've been wanting to do, and you've read all the instructions, a 3/4 of a cup of this and a half a teaspoon of this, and put this in at 350 degrees. And it sounded all simple and the picture looked beautiful, but when you actually made it is where you learned more about how to do not only that, but even so many other cool dishes. Maybe I don't have any cooking people in the house. But I'll give you an example. Early in my life, probably at around 19 years old, I hadn't not given my life to Christ very long. And I got a passion for the Word and got saved out of just some really radical circumstances. And within a couple of months, I felt this compelling. I knew God was telling me, I got it out of Scripture about what His purpose for my life was. And it was ministry through the area of communication. And we're all ministers, don't get me wrong, in all areas in communication. But it was a little more specified than that, but it came out of the passage of Timothy. Any of you could read it. It's in all of our Bibles. But for me, I just knew it was personal. I knew it was one of those things that God was just speaking. Any of you ever had those times where you're reading the Bible and it's like anybody in the world can read this, but when you're reading it, it was for you right there. Yeah. And so it said this. It said, be sober in all things. It had my attention right there. Sobriety was a challenge at that phase of my life. Even though I'd given my life to Christ, I was still battling the battle of being sober. And maybe sober for 4 or 5 days and then not for a couple of days and then for a few days and not for a few days. It had a lot to do with the environment that I would be around. In the right environment, it was easy to be sober. And in the wrong environment that I was always accustomed to, it was easy to not be sober. So it said, be sober in all things. Do the work of an evangelist. Fulfill your ministry. Now, this is what's crazy. I knew it meant communication and talking at that time of my life, and still, honestly, if I'm just to peel my heart open today, it is the least confident area of my life. I would be way more confident in pulling on the side of the road and helping you change a flat tire than talking to you any day of the week. We can cut your grass. We can help paint your house and put a roof on your house. It goes way easier than just sometimes a conversation between you and I. And you're like, but you're talking right now and you do all this and you make, no. Can I just tell you, in the back of my mind, I'm always going, nobody has anything to say, cares what I had to say. What if I say something stupid? The battles are rolling, but at the same time, it's always the heart also knowing, I know my God is faithful, I know what He's called to do, and I see what He does. And I'm just throwing it out there. Nobody has ever arrived. We are all a work in progress. And so I remember I got saved, and I was wanting to do this, and so I thought, okay, I need to find somebody who can help me. And so what do I do? There's this guy at my school. His name was Brett. I was going to Louisiana College time. And Brett was it was only 2 people in the school that just really radically shined out. One of them was Brett, and one of them was a guy named Nick Fontenot who actually led me to the Lord on accident. He didn't even know he did it. I mean, that's how fired up for Jesus he was and how God was working through him. And so one day I kept watching for Brett because Brett was a youth pastor, and Brett just was fanatical, and Brett was leading ministries, and he was doing things. So I was like, if anybody knows how to preach, it's Brett. So Brett's my age. He's from Franklin, Louisiana, and God's just doing great things in Pineville, Louisiana through. And finally, I kept waiting and waiting. He was always surrounded by people. And I kept waiting to catch him alone. But the problem also is I don't like to just initiate conversation. I do now. I didn't then. And so finally I look out one night, and around midnight I see Brett walking to the gym. I'm like, yeah, buddy, here's the chance. You know nobody else is going to be there, right? It's kind of like go to the gym in February. You know, everything goes down. And so I don't go to the gym any time of the year, so it doesn't matter to me. But anyway, I run from them, and it's exercise. You gotta find your strategy. But anyway, so I go in there, and I'm moving pins. I don't know how y'all do it these days. I don't know what the machines look like, but it had pins you'd move for different weights and different things. And since I didn't know what this stuff was, sometimes I'd get on and be like, I'm like, yeah, I'm not ready to max out today, and move it on up and do different things, shifting around. Because the whole time, all I'm doing is trying to get the nerve to talk to him, because he won't talk to me. He's a Christian, supposed to talk. When I walked in the door, I was like, hey man, how you doing? Good. It's just like, God's not opening doors, and Brett's not being friendly enough. So finally I just sit there and I'm like, I got to just swallow and go for it. And so I walk across the gym, a little small place, and I said, man, you don't know me. He said, it's all right. I said, you're Brett. And he said, because if they don't know you, it's always good to tell them their name like they didn't know. And I said, Brett. And I said, man, my name is Danny. And I said, I just really want to talk to you for a minute. And he drops everything. He turns around and sits down. He's like, all right, so what's up? And I said, man, I know you don't know me, but I see God working through you. I see Jesus shining through you. It's obvious. Everybody on campus knows this. I know you're involved in a ministry somehow. You do some youth pastoring and stuff, whatever that means. And I said, so you preach, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, I got saved a couple of months ago, man. I just believe that God is calling me to preach. In which it'd probably be the same thing as if you've been saved for a couple months. You told me, I'm just like, all right, And so he said, and he said, okay. And I was like, so I just need to know, how do you do it? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, how do you do this preaching thing? What are some steps I need to take? I mean, I'm in school, or there's some classes I need to take. There's some places I need to be. What gives, And he's like, and I remember that night he was just kind of caught off guard and didn't know what to say. And what could you say, really? I'm looking for a technique, and I'm looking for a step 1, 2, 3, and then 4, you arrive. And I don't remember what he shared with me. There was nothing really that I could write down that made any difference. But what he did do that night was set my heart on fire, because what he did is he invited me to a youth revival that they had going on. They called it Jesus Freak Week, of all things. And so he invites me to this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going. And this is before you had iPhones and Google and all this kind of stuff. So I had to literally go and get on dial-up internet in the computer lab to find out how to get to this place and print off instructions and try to follow. Any of y'all remember those days? And we thought they were glorious. You could print off Google Maps. And so anyway, I get it, and I find this church where he's at, and I walk in, and all of a sudden, and it's just smoke-filled, and the lights are dim, and it's packed out, and there's hundreds of people there, and I see beach balls bouncing around me, and it was wild, it was nuts, and I just went, I'd never been around anything like that. I went, wow. And set my heart on fire as an ignorant person of just what God can do. Of just saying, wow, God, this is so much bigger than I can imagine. You can literally reach lots more than just 2 people. This is incredible. And these are things that you can do in the town that I grew up in. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I know why you're calling me now. I see a greater vision than I understood before. And I remember what I walked out with was Brett. I went there to listen to how he preached, so I would know what words to put where. I wasn't going to learn from a Bible. I didn't even know I needed to learn from a Bible yet. Remember, God will speak to you in the midst of your ignorance or your arrogance. He will speak in the midst of your ignorance or your arrogance, even if it's at the stage where he says, sober up so you can do this. And I walked away not with a howl that night, but I walked away with something so much more powerful that literally leads my family. It leads the way we do church. It leads the way I talk to my children. It leads the way in public. It leads every area. And what he revealed to me that night, he invited me to discover, was something so much more powerful than a how. And it was called a why. A why. I didn't learn how, but I did learn why. And I'm just going to say it like this. If you would love to know not just how to overcome disappointment, but a way to continuously live, not to have a life that you're running away from, but to live more satisfied because you have a life to live for, You know, there's no way we can ever lay out the how-tos of it. It's just not logistically possible for every single person. But what we can do is realize that God has revealed something much, much more powerful for you and I than a how will ever be. And it will discover the how, but it's called a why. And your why, this is going to make sense in a minute, will always direct your how. Let's acknowledge the pain, for instance. Let's dig back in the story of Joseph in Genesis 37. Let's acknowledge the pain of a God dream first. Last week, Joseph had a dream that his brothers were going to bow and he was going to stand, and they ended up capturing him and throwing him in a well and selling him into slavery. And this is where he just gets sold. This is Joseph, 17 years old, just got sold into slavery. Watch this. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt. He's with them. Where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. About this time, Judah left home, and Judah was a brother, by the way, and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hira. There he saw a Canaanite, the daughter of Shua, and he married her. When he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and named the boy Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Onan. Watch this. We got 2 more verses like this. And when she gave birth to a third son, she named him Shelah. At the time of Shelah's birth, wouldn't you love guys to be named Shelah? Can you imagine what junior high would be like? They were living in Kezeb. In the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son, to marry a young woman named Tamar. You go, man, what in the world does any of this have to do with a God dream or anything? My point is this. Can we be brutally honest? You know the painful part about believing for what God revealed and believing for what God will do, can do, and is doing through you is that it can seem that when God's plan is happening, but our plan is not, it can seem that everyone else is having a normal life while we just sit in a waiting room of life passing us by. Have you ever, you experienced this sometimes, perhaps? Notice, Joseph, God gave him a dream. And his brothers, they tried to destroy the dream. And Joseph is abandoned on the spur of the moment, and he's kicked out, and he's sold into slavery. And it appears that his life as he knew it had ended, and literally it had. And just as his dreams are being destroyed, it seems just as quickly everyone else is just getting to move along and have a normal life. Just as my world is falling apart, everybody else has it easy. They're moving out, they're getting married, they're having grandkids, they're setting up new weddings, everything is going well. But Joseph's life appeared over while everyone else has continued on. Have you ever felt like this? Perhaps maybe you were working for somewhere for a lot of years and they had a cutback, and now you can't buy microwave meals anymore because you've actually got to be wise with your money and buy meals that you cook, so you have to change your time so you can spread things out. And you're trying to figure out how to make things work while you pull up your Facebook and you look and your buddies just got promoted and they're having barbecues on their new property. Or, Perhaps it's the day where, you really believed great things for your husband. You saw the flicker, you saw the spark, you saw the smile inside of him. And it's like, yes, he is coming around. All these years I've been praying for him. And then, yet you're at home and you're still praying and believing, and it seems to have gotten kind of quiet while you look out the window and your neighbor's husband's bringing flowers home for the second time this week for no reason at all. And it's like, but God, everybody else is just moving along. Everybody else is moving along. Maybe your child is struggling in school and they got a smile and everything's going well, but they're struggling. And you know the struggles you're doing just to try to keep their head above water. Well, it seems like everybody else's kids just making it look easy and like throwing up principal's list just for showing up. It's like, God, why is it that everything seems normal and blessed for everybody else, but my life, I'm serving you and I'm living for you and I'm pursuing you and I'm just hanging out here? Come on, do you remember the excitement of the dream? But do you also remember sometimes the pain of waiting that comes sometimes? You know what's harder than waiting is the imagination that tells us how easy everyone else has it. Sure, he's bringing home flowers for the second time this week. They don't tell you about the time they got divorced and remarried 6 years ago and they were apart for 7 years. We don't see that story. We don't see the story. Sure, he's got his new property. We don't see the part where they were living with his parents for 2 years just a little while back. You know, isn't it amazing how our imagination can just go wild? All Joseph had was an imagination of how easy his brothers had it. So let's move forward. Let's check out Joseph here. Joseph became a slave in the top military captain's house. Joseph served in the house, but as a servant, he got promoted to the head of all the property that his master owned. He got to be the administrator of it all. But as a servant, as he got promoted, life seems to be good, except that he is a slave. And then the captain's wife comes along and wants to sleep with him, and he will not. So she lies about it and says he tried to rape her, and he goes from being a slave to a prisoner. Joseph from a slave to a prisoner. And watch this. Even in prison, though, we'll look at this later, but in Genesis 39, 21, 22, it says that Joseph was in prison, but even there, the faithful love of the Lord was with him. And the prison warden ended up elevating him to being the highest ranking person in the prison and made him, even as a prisoner, administrator over all the other prisoners and everything else that went on there. And then Joseph had what appeared his opportunity to come. He had been in there for a couple of years. And as he's in there for a couple of years, then some people have a dream, and God gives him the ability to interpret the dream, and the dream is going to result in one of the guys are going to get out of prison the next day, and they're going to be a servant right next to Pharaoh and get to talk to Pharaoh, who's the king of all of Egypt, the next day. And Joseph sees this opportunity. God has provided. And then hey, remember me in front of Pharaoh tomorrow. And this is what he tells him in chapter 40 and verse 15 of Genesis. This is what he tells the guy. He says, I need your help. He says, for I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews. And now I am here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. I did nothing to deserve it. You ever been there? We don't say this in front of a crowd, I know. But do you ever secretly tell yourself, I don't deserve this. I didn't do anything to deserve this. Nobody should be treated like I'm treated. Nobody should have to go through what I'm going through. Nobody understands. I don't deserve it after all. And then we add, after all I did. Let me ask you. Joseph, for him, he had the imagination. He gets continually deflated. And the one he hoped would help him actually forgot about him. And again, one man gets an ordinary life, and Joseph gets to continue sleeping behind bars. But God gave Joseph a dream. This isn't how a dream is supposed to go, is it? Joseph had the dream that he would stand in his brother's bow. He would stand in his brother's bow. This is not according to the dream. Isn't that how it is still? Maybe your details are different, but still it's got a lot of similarities. It's the same. Let me ask you, what is a hope you have that has resulted in a disappointment? What is a hope that you have had that resulted in a disappointment? And if you could see the disappointment now wasn't a destruction of the dream, how would it change if you could see the disappointment was not a destruction of the dream, but was actually a preparation for the outcome? Do you know disappointments are not the end? What if there are actually two kinds of disappointments? What if there is a non-believer disappointment? Non-believer, what I mean is this, I possibly believe there is a God, but I do not believe that really Jesus took care of everything for me on the cross. I do not believe that he paid for all of my sins. I still need to work on some things. I don't know if I can swallow the pill that I am saved by grace just by believing on Jesus and receiving his wonderful love and just saying, you know what, I don't get it, but I believe you love me no matter what, and you're for me in the middle of anything, and you're walking with me wherever I go. When you receive that, you become a believer. But when you're just on the curiosity end, or just maybe like my kid was this morning when I asked him, I said, did you read your Bible this morning? He's 9 years old. And he said, yeah, and we was talking about children's church, and I said something. He says, and he was not wanting to go today. And he has fun, and he does all this stuff, but it was just one of those days, He's just like, oh my God. I said, man, you're going to have a blast. He said, but I know all those stories they're going to share. 9 years old, y'all. Do we progress much as adults sometimes? Start reading the Bible and I already know where this is going. And don't realize there's a new revelation. That this relationship is ever evolving. It's always growing. And God is always revealing more and more and more to us. It seemed that Joseph's dreams were all over. Years ago, some of you would remember this, there was a lady named Elizabeth Elliot. Her husband's name was Jim Elliot. Jim Elliot, Nate Saint, and a few other guys. Jim Elliot was a guy who got radically saved early on. And in his high school years, he heard about these people called the Akua Indians in Ecuador. This was around the 50s. Well, this was pre-50s. The event was in the 50s. And he decided from early on that he was setting his heart intent to reach the Akua Indians. The Akua Indians, the problem with them was nobody could get close to them. They were a very violent tribe. Anybody come in contact, they just killed them. And in fact, oil companies that would drill in that area always were, it would come up sometimes that their workers would be killed off because they would just come in, they would get too close to the tribe, and the tribe would wipe them out. And so it was known how violent and how vile this tribe was. Nobody could reach them, but for Jim Elliot, he said, you know, I know what God is leading me to do. I know the passion inside. I know the dream God has given me. So he orchestrated, his whole high school was a passion and prayer and bit to that. He left high school, went to college to study, to learn language, to do the Spanish, to do all kind of things that would put him in a better setup to meet these Indians that nobody else could get in contact with one day. Actually, Jim's prayer was this. He said, Lord, I ask not for a long life, but for a full one. And so he continues on, and then he buddies up with some people in college, and they're like, yeah, let's do this. And they all move to South America. They get down there for a little while. They're learning the people. They're learning the area. They're learning all the logistics of it. He gets a pilot to come in, gets some other buddies to come in. They all of a sudden, they get married. They have kids. I mean, so time is going by, okay? And then they start flying the plane. They find where the tribe is. And they start flying strategically at certain times so that the tribe will get accustomed, like, oh, that thing is harmless. Oh, it's familiar. And then they go to the next step, again, dropping gifts. They would drop down low and throw gifts out on a beach so the plane could land in water in the river there. But they wouldn't land. They would just drop gifts and drop gifts and drop gifts over a series of weeks and months, trying to butter them up. Until the day finally comes that I believe it's time for us to land. It's time. We spent all these years, way over a decade, for this moment. It's time. And surely God is with them, and surely God's going to do great things, and surely it's perfect timing. And so as they land in the river there, and they get out, and they walk on the beach, they meet the Indians they have been wanting so badly to meet face to face. But the only problem was, within a matter of moments, the Indians murdered all of them. As they ran out to the river saying, why are you killing us? Why are you killing us? And they just murdered them with the very machetes they had dropped to them for gifts to help them in the jungle. It would seem that the dream was over. That's extreme. What happened was, in a matter of a short time, Elizabeth Elliot, now a widow, now a single mother, in widowhood. The passion hadn't left her. And she gathers whatever of the other widows will go with her and says, let's go back to the tribe. And the results was they actually got into the tribe. They got accepted by the tribe. The tribe, they brought their children to live among the tribe that killed their husbands. The tribe that everybody walked around naked and they had a string around their waist and called themselves clothed as they raised their little children in this atmosphere. And the results was those widows reached that tribe for Christ. And up until a few years ago, even the very chief who murdered Jim Elliot traveled around with Jim Elliot's son, sharing the good news of Jesus Christ all over the United States. And that's from the 50s. You say, well, man, that's extreme. Yeah, that's probably a very extreme dream and extreme situations. You know, we clap, but Elizabeth Elliot, imagine what that was like. Because we say, praise God, they were reached, but they were reached at the cost of her marriage, and her husband, and her son's father. It's extreme, but God's extreme dreams are this. They're more than about giving us a life of pleasure. It's about giving us a life that eternally matters for people that are all around us. For Joseph, 2 years more and in prison. His connections to Pharaoh, they forgot about him. And Joseph did get out, and he was let out spontaneously on the spur of the moment. They called it a 24-hour miracle because he was a prisoner that was forever forgotten. And not only did he get out of prison, but he got out of prison to be immediately employed as the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. That's a pretty great thing. Joseph dreamed at 17, and he was released at 30. It will be 9 more years before his brother's regrets will be relived because he will see his brothers actually right there in front of him. And all the waiting and all the pain, and can you imagine all the pressure to just be angry? and just be bitter. Isn't that what time does? Isn't that what waiting can do? It fuels the anger. You know, probably some of you have been angry in a doctor's office. Isn't it cool that you make an appointment to wait? And we all laugh at that, but you know what? Most of us don't realize we've been fooled. Nobody tells us about the second waiting room. Right? Because we get in the first one, we sign our name, we sign the time we're on there, and we think that time is going to make a difference. And then they say, have a seat, and someone will call you in a moment. And we sit down, and then we wait. And what happens when you sit down? If it's like when I sit down, everybody goes back there pretty quick but me. Am I the only one? And they're going, and you're like, wow. And then people start coming out, and you're like, oh, that's my seat. Nope, somebody else goes into it. And you start wondering what's going on back there. And then the hoodwinkingest trick of them all. The lady opens that door. Danny? Yes, ma'am. That you? Yeah. Come on. We're going to get you back here and check your date of birth. It still hadn't changed and all that. Yeah. All right, sit here and the doctor will be with you in a moment. They don't tell you they're calling you out of one waiting room just to go into another waiting room. And this waiting room is demonic. Because you think when you set an appointment with a doctor, this has a point. You think when you set an appointment with a doctor, you're going to get a miracle shot, get your antibiotic, you're going to be flying tomorrow and conquering the world, right? And everything is going to be wonderful and blessed. But no, you're in a second waiting room already, you know, an hour and a half in or whatever, you know, different ones, different ways. And then you sit back there, and I'm not convinced that it's not just some sort of MP3 player with speakers in the hallway, because you can hear the doctor constantly talking to people, and you hear all the doors opening and closing and opening and closing, opening and closing, and you keep wondering, when is my door going to open? Y'all do that? Come on. I'm not dogging the doctors. Praise God for them. But let me wait with everybody. Don't make me wait by myself. But that's what waiting does, doesn't it? Waiting fuels what it does. Waiting will tempt us to be angry. And waiting will tempt us to set ourselves and think everybody is out and everybody's against me. Check out Joseph. You thought the doctor would have an amazing miracle shot, but nope, you waited. For Joseph, though, he had a dream. And that dream put him waiting in a well. And then it put him waiting as a slave. And then it put him waiting as a prisoner. And then it put him waiting semi-still as a prisoner, but with benefits. He could be second in command, but he still was not free to leave and come and go of his own accord. In a time when nations were out of food, though, he met his brothers as they bowed. And this is his response in verse 22. Check this out. This is incredible. I am Joseph, he said to his brothers, as they're bowed before him, asking for more stuff. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there right in front of them. Listen. Please, come closer, he said to them. So they came closer, and he said again, I am Joseph. Did you hear me? I am your brother, the one you sold into slavery. But watch this, verse 5. But don't be upset about it, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. Because I want to tell you, you can't take the credit or the glory or anything else, because it was God who sent me here. Ahead of you, but stay on verse 5. Ahead of you to preserve your life. You thought you threw me in a well, and you thought you were going to kill my dream, and you thought you sold me into slavery, and you thought y'all were going to live high and buy bubble gum off the little 20 pieces of silver you sold me for. But you thought all these things, but you weren't doing nothing, because it was, even in that, when you thought you were destroying me, you were nothing but a tool in God's hands for what the dream he had already showed me. And he did it all so that I could save you. Wow. He flipped the script. Somebody would do good, you know what? We would all do good to stop looking down on our suffering and begin looking up to the one who never forgot us, who never left us, who never walked away, who never gave up. In fact, he orchestrated the whole entire thing. And not one time in all the chaos did he ever stop having control. And yes, it may be confusing. And no, maybe you're not where you thought you would be when you thought you would be there. And you know what? And maybe you would have done it differently if you could have. But here's the thing. We didn't have control on it. And maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it did happen differently, but if you could have, but you didn't have the power to control the things that have happened. But can I say this? They were all part of the plan. And the plan always reveals that God never forgets the promises and the visions and the dreams that he gives. But you know what is more powerful? Can I tell you what? Now that you are here, he brings you to the place where you arrive at something so much bigger than just saying, God never forgot me. He can bring you to the place that you can look and all of a sudden you move from God never forgot me to all of a sudden going, oh my goodness, look what he is doing through me now. A place sometimes we never imagine we will be in the transitions. Can I say this? The promises are not pain-free. And the dream is rarely ever dreamy. But can I say the dream fulfilled is always bigger than the dream you saw. The dream fulfilled is always bigger than the dream you saw. It gets me excited when I think about it. I dream of the Miss Lou being 2/3 of people that never even have no idea what divorce is like. I dream of the day where 2/3 of all the children in the Miss Lou, Concordia, and Adams, and Tensall, and beyond don't have any clue what it's like not to have mom and dad in the same home. And that's not a discredit to anything. I'm just saying I believe God is changing the tide. And I believe he works through you and me and us to get it done. I look forward to the day where, you know what, in Vidalia, Louisiana, it's just like not even a weird thing to think there's a church where 5,000 people would like to gather each and every week because of what God is doing in their lives and the families he is rescuing, all that and beyond. Do you know right now there are people that are tuned in with you online from New Orleans to Alabama to Arkansas to various parts of the world? Do you realize just in this past year there were over 59,000 times that people tuned in with you? Do you realize it's so much more than the 130 hours that if you were here every single, and I wasn't, if you were here every Sunday and every Wednesday for the all of last year, including the Sunday and the Wednesday we took off, if you were here the entire time, you were here a whole 130 hours. But do you realize over 535 hours were other people tuning in and checking in with what God is doing through your life? You don't realize God is using you so much greater than you realize. 33,800 minutes of somebody saying, well, something is going on in Vidalia, Louisiana, and I know it's God that's got to be doing it. And are becoming a part and building a community. You know what, but I look forward to the day where all of a sudden, you know what, people drive down and it's like, there's a church with like 5,000 people. It's like, well, duh. It's only 30,000 people in the area. It should be much larger than that by now. And I look forward to the day where people are not surprised by largeness, but they're surprised by smallness because of the good things that God's doing. And I say all that to say this. The beauty is the dream fulfilled is always bigger than the dream we see. The dream fulfilled is always bigger than the dream we see. Check out Joseph. Joseph dreamed that his brothers would bow, right? He's got 11 guys that are going to bow before him. He did not dream that he would deliver them. He did not dream that he would provide for them. He did not dream that he would be a deliverer of nations, of hundreds of thousands of other people. All he saw was his brothers bowing before him. He didn't see that he would be a deliverer of nations. It's not important, can I say this? It's not important to have the how-tos for fulfillment. But there is freedom in confusion, and there is authority in slavery, and there is victory when the world calls it all out defeat, to know that God gave you a dream, and he gave you a passion, and he gave you a burden, and it's not because of what you and I get. But he gives the dream because of what God gets to give through you. I don't know if you're catching the magnitude of that. The dream is not about what we get. He gives the dream because then it's what God gets to do through you. It's freedom. Can I say this? There is no disappointment that can hold you when you know that he gave you the hope to work through you and that he is faithful to complete the good work that he already began. Let's finish this up in 45, verse 6 through 9. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years. And there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. I love the just audacity of this. And God has sent me here ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. Don't confuse it. Don't think you had an upper hand. When it looked like I was defeated, I was still an overcomer because God was with me. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh. He is the one who made me a manager of his entire palace. And he is the one, God alone, who made me the governor of all of Egypt. Verse 9. Now hurry back to my father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says that you haven't seen for over 20-something years. God made me master of all the land of Egypt. So come down immediately. You know, to say, I can just picture he's looking at his brother and saying, you thought you were making me a slave, but God used what you did to make me a master. So thank you for being a part of the plan, because you thought you were destroying the plan. You thought you were destroying the dream, but yet the whole time God was preparing me for the dream. I've got a question for you today. Consider the moment, the painful moments of your life. Not the self-inflicted pain, the pain that found you. You know what I mean? You know the difference, right? Self-inflicted pain is I get drunk and I run off the levee and I tear all kind of things up. You know what? Non-self-inflicted pain is I'm minding my business going through a green light when somebody wipes me out running a red. You follow what I'm saying? Consider the pain moments, not the self-inflicted ones, but the pain that found you. I want to ask you a question. Have you seen yet God use your pain for greater gain? Have you seen God use your pain yet for greater gain? Did it hurt? Yes, it hurt. Is there still sorrow? It's likely. Does anyone really understand? Maybe, maybe not. But here's one thing that is proven. Everyone experiences pain. So we can either let the disappointment be born and die with us, or we can use that pain for a greater gain. I don't know about you, it sounds like a miserable thing just to allow disappointment to come into my life, just to live and stay and fester like a sore in me and then die with me when God gave it to me for what he can do through me. God gave you what you have because of what he can do through you. Because the pain, the disappointment that the devil planned to destroy you is also the place that Jesus enables to radiate his joy through you. A disappointment is never a failure when you trust Jesus to complete what the disappointment tries its hardest to end. Does that make sense? Let's consider Joseph in a different light. Let's rewrite his story, okay? 22 years until he's the second in command in Egypt. Let's just totally reflip the script. Let's make Joseph an ungodly man. Let's make Joseph just a selfish, self-righteous, stuck on himself. I don't deserve this kind of guy. You know the kind of people, probably we see them in the mirror sometimes. And so let's picture Joseph. You know what? He does get thrown in a well. And let's picture Joseph being very normal, okay? Because none of you are called to be normal, by the way. Let's picture he's very normal. And he looks at the bottom of that well and says, if I ever get out of here, I'm whooping every one of y'all. I can't wait to tell my daddy, you know, whatever, because he's a little brother. Come down here, I'll whoop any one of you, one at a time, take it out. Let's just have it out. Sick of you and just every explicit word in the book. There's not a filter strong enough to filter what a normal person would have done. And let's picture he does get out, and he does get sold into slavery, and his brothers do go on their business, and he does go into this commander's house. And then the day that his wife comes, the commander's wife comes along, the commander's wife is looking because she's the one who pursued him. And let's make Joseph normal. Says, okay, you know I was stolen, and you know you have made me a slave. Nobody deserves to be a slave, and you're going to treat me like this. I tell you what, that's all right. You invite me into your house, but I'm also going to invite myself to your woman. She wants me, and I'll show you. One day you'll come home, and you'll see you'll be caring for my child instead of your child. Yeah, listen to what normal people would do. I've been lonely. I'm never going to get married anyway, so I might as well enjoy a little pleasure right here. That's what a normal person would have done. Listen, it sounds violent, and it sounds ugly, but from what I've seen, humans can get pretty ugly. I'm not trying to be distasteful. And let's picture he does get thrown in prison. But when he gets thrown in prison, let's picture he just raves and rages and whines and angers all the time. I didn't deserve this. Y'all need to let me out. Y'all can't hold me here. Do you know who my daddy is? Wait till my buddies get here. They'll get me out. Let's just picture he just rages the whole time, because that's what normal people do, right? That's what we do when we are left to our own leadership and our own guidance. We are going to handle business, even when we can't do anything about it. And let's just picture, he does all this, which would have resulted in one of two things. He would have either been put in solitary confinement for the rest of his life, or more than likely, he'd have just been decapitated, okay? Well, let's write this script. Let's finish it out as the team comes. We could go on and on and on, but here's some things that are not changing. The plague is still coming. The drought is still coming. And here's what would have happened. God would have still allowed the plague to come, but the dream that God gave Joseph would have been stripped. Now let's just say his brothers and his father, and they do come, but he's not there. And what happens is his brothers die, his father dies, hundreds of thousands of people die. And history literally would have been reshaped. Today, I don't have to ask, do you have disappointments? Everybody has a story. And you know what makes your story so big? It's that it's personal. When sin was given the opportunity, why is disappointment? Everybody has disappointment in their story, and they have it because of this. When sin was given the opportunity to become active, disappointment was unleashed on the earth. And I know you have them, and I have them, and everybody's disappointment is big because you know what? Because it's your disappointment. But today I hope to remind you that you know what? The hope that God has given, the hope that he places inside you is so much bigger than the disappointment that's trying to live in there. His dream for you is bigger than the disappointment that keeps attacking you. And if you're willing to let him have control and willing to believe by faith that he is still working in the middle of his plan, in the middle of your discouragement, in the middle of your disappointment, then can I tell you, if you are willing to believe that, you will see the fulfillment come. And though your heart may be sick for a season, the dream fulfilled will be a tree of life to you. And the tree of life does not only provide benefit for you, but it will provide life for all of those around you. I've got some today. I found it on sale in the spirit of Star Wars' latest release. Star Wars fans, sorry. I really don't know what the point is other than they run around shooting at ships of each other, but my kids understand it. But you know, any of y'all ever done Legos? You done jigsaw puzzles, you done your flavor, whatever. Isn't it cool they always give you a box? And they show you, and what do? You put the box there because you buy that particular box because of the picture, right? It's because of something you want to attain. You want to see it come out. You believe, you know what, it's going to come together. It's going to be cool, right? Because everything we do is always like the picture we see, right? No, pictures fails exist because of that. Because that's not true. And so what happens? This is kind of like a God dream. He gives you a picture, and what God does is he gives you a picture of the fulfillment. And he gets excited. It's like, yes, I know God is working in me. I know God is doing great things. I know, man, I'm not even feeling the desire to drugs today. I want to go home today. I know I've been down for a long time, but I know God is still my provider, and it's going to come around. I believe that he's never leaving me, never forsaking me. I know, and we get this picture, and we see this, whatever the passion, the burden, the dream that he's given you is, and we see it, it's like, yes, God's going to use me to do great things, like me, saved at 2 months trying to be sober and saying I'm supposed to be a preacher. He's like, yes, yes, yes. But what we don't realize sometimes is we allow disappointment because we don't see the pieces. Right? But without the pieces, you never get the picture. But you know what? I was going to get this way, and this may mess it up. But when I start blaming you for my pieces, and start blaming it's your fault, and I didn't deserve this, and I don't know why you did it, they're not going to hurt the very life. And I start throwing my pieces at everybody. It's your fault this happened. And then all of a sudden what we do is we just get all crazy. We start to think, God did it. And we start getting mad at God and we start throwing our pieces. And we don't realize he gave us a picture, and he said, I'm giving you a picture because I want you to trust me with the pieces, because we're going to put the pieces together, and it's going to be a beautiful picture. But don't throw away your pieces as if it's a cursed picture. It's a beautiful picture. What you saw is true. But you know what? The dream, when it's fulfilled, it's going to be a whole lot bigger than just the picture you see. Lord Jesus, I thank you for today, God. I thank you for the great work you are doing in so many people's lives, God. And And I thank you that with you there is not a peace that is wasted. There is not a failure that is doomed to disappointment. There is not a waiting that is not for a purpose, that is waiting for a divine season, that is in all reality just working out some immaturities in us and preparing us for where you have birthed and destined each one of us individually to be. God, I thank you that there is never a fight in the home that you don't have a victorious outcome already sitting there handed with pieces. To make a beautiful picture. I thank you that there is no addiction that's stronger than what you can do in somebody's life, making them brand new. I thank you that there is no hope, that there is no disappointment that does have the power to destroy, because your hope overcomes it all. Lord Jesus, may we continue to grow together, have the compassion to use the good and the bad of what we've been through in order to rescue other people and see other people find eternity with you, Jesus. But perhaps today, with heads bowed and eyes closed, when Jesus was crucified on the cross, it looked like a failure. His disciples, they split and they run. They didn't understand it was just a piece of time to get to the real picture. That salvation would be forever given to those who would believe and receive in his work on the cross. They didn't realize that what appeared like a defeat was actually the greatest path to victory there ever was. They didn't realize that Jesus had to face death to defeat death. Today, possibly you like my 9-year-old son says, I know all the stories. But today, Jesus is calling his pride on your heart, saying, yeah, but if you would know me in a relationship, that's what would get you through the disappointment that continues to tear you down. Because as a believer, the disappointment is just a destiny in the process. How much different would your life be if you moved from a religious stance to a relationship stance? How much more beautiful would it be if you realized it's not just a book of stories, but that book is written for your story? And I want to ask you today, with heads bowed and eyes closed in here, very briefly, but if God is drawing on your heart today to say, you are moving past religion into a relationship, saying, I'm not being a church attender anymore. Today, I'm giving my life radically to Jesus. I believe in his complete work on the cross, that it forgives me of every sin that I have ever done, self-inflicted and tricked into or whatever. I believe that it defeats every discouragement and disappointment that continues to reign and rule my life. I believe it even defeats all the hang-ups that I have going. I believe it's powerful enough even for God to tell me to be sober and give me a ministry, and it's going to happen. I believe that God is big enough today. I'm moving from a religion to a relationship, and you realize that Jesus is calling out to you today. Would you please, just right here, very briefly, I'm just going to pray with you. Raise your hand on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Hands in the air. We just want to pray with you. Heads bowed and eyes closed. God bless you. 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 I want to ask you today, if your hands up, nobody else, if your hands up, just look up. Everybody else head bowed, but your hands up, just look up. Just you. Can I tell you, you've made one of the most courageous decisions today. And the awesome part is, you can look around because other people aren't taking their hands down. You're not alone. People are in this journey with you. And the hope is coming alive. Let's pray together as a church. Because this isn't just a church thing, this is new life. I can't give you how, but I can just give you whys. The whys will lead to how. So if you will, as a church, we embrace, we take in new people. Let's pray together, if you will, please, as a family. Not because of the words, it reflects the heart. Lord Jesus, today I give you my life. I'm turning away from my sin, and I'm trusting you with my future. Lead me and guide me, and I will follow you. In Jesus' name. Everybody said, amen, amen. Romans 10:9-10 says, if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus died and did these things for you, then it says you result in righteousness and salvation. Here's the cool thing. You thought you were saying a prayer to be saved, but you just said a prayer that resulted in righteousness as well. I don't care what you did this morning. You're free indeed today. This is the grace of Jesus Christ. there's a place on there, share my story. Just share it so we can celebrate. We're getting ready for baptisms coming up here pretty soon, and would love just, to help you step by step by step. And as you apply, you see that purpose unroll a little bit more and a little bit more. Can we stand and worship Jesus for all the